The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
So what is Mike Locksley's reaction to those in the crowd on Saturday in College Park chanting, "Fire Locksley, fire Locksley"? We'll hear that coming up. I was actually there to hear it, and I left after the first half. Those who stuck around for the second half probably got quite a bit louder as they turned it over 5 times and lost the game 55-10. Frankie Louvu's going to be on the field. Woohoo! But the line is now 9.5. That's huge. Huge home underdog for Washington on Sunday against the Detroit Lions. We'll talk about that. And the YouTube dispute. I don't have YouTube TV. If I did, I'd be hopping mad, I guess. Others are. We'll get the latest from Andrew Marchand, who covers sports media for The Athletic. He talked to Dan Patrick about it yesterday. I do have friends who have it, and it was offered as a terrific deal 5 years ago that you could bundle the sports for $39 a month, and a lot of people jumped on it, and it's all good until you can't get the sports. And I still have cable. I'm probably well overpaying for that. But it is what it is, and I'm old, and I guess I got to figure out streaming at some point. But streaming and YouTube TV and all the other services are going through an odd, not odd, I guess these are growing pains, considering that we had cable TV for what? I mean, really, I would say 40 years, right? It's still going, but it's on its way out. And now we transition, and I'm talking, out of my ear here because I really know nothing about this, but it's just interesting to hear my friends complaining about the big dispute that's going on between Disney and YouTube TV. We'll get to that. Frankie Louvu is going to play on Sunday. That's a little bit of good news for an organization that needs it. They just don't have players anymore. Yesterday, they put Marshawn Lattimore on injured reserve. He's out for the year, definitely. Looks like a torn ACL. And Luke McCaffrey is also going on IR. He's got a broken collarbone. Possible he plays before the end of the year, but uncertain at this point. I would play it safe. You don't want re-injury on that. Team's going nowhere. Right now, Jaden Daniels is not on injured reserve, but it seems almost certain that he'll miss the next 4 games and probably longer than that. So there's really no rush for it other than you can get another guy on the roster. But I think it's possible before the end of the week he'll go on IR. We're going to find out, I think. Dan Quinn has been very good at this, shuffling things along. But he indicated we'd get more information on the dislocated elbow for Jaden Daniels today. The Commanders are back on the practice field for Detroit, and the coach always speaks on Wednesday, so we'll hear the latest. But it's a season going down the tubes quickly, and there's a very good column by Candace Buckner today in the Post, which I'm going to go over in a little bit. The interesting thing about the Louvu situation is, and I guess this is part of the changing NFL. I wasn't aware of this, but Derek Brooks, Hall of Fame linebacker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, won a Super Bowl with them, is on the committee to consider appeals. Now, I thought the appeals went directly to Roger Goodell's office, and it was Goodell's office that would issue the suspension. And on Monday, it was announced that Louvu was going to be suspended for 1 game for repeated violations of the hip drop tackle rule. And number 3 this season occurred on a tackle that I don't really even remember because they didn't tackle him very much. But Jackson Smith-Njigba in the game on Sunday night was taken to the ground after a reception. There was no flag thrown. No flag. This was all after review, and the league looked at the tape of it, and they said, oh, no, this is we're going to do this for the first time. This is the first time a player has been suspended for violation of that rule. And then there was the appeal, which I didn't expect to go anywhere. And not only did they get him back on the field, but it saves Louvu a lot of money. They still fined him $100,000, but he was going to lose a game check, which is $500,000. So good for him, good for the team, and we will see Louvu, but I don't know how much good he's going to do. The line is up to 9.5 on Sunday. All right, interesting day for baseball in the area. The Orioles announced their new manager with the manager there. I'll get to that in a second. The Nationals officially announced their new manager without the manager there. I'm not sure why they did it this way, But Paul Taboni, who is the new president of baseball operations for the Nationals, 32 years old, has hired this 33-year-old manager who's never managed at the major league level, has never managed above A-ball, and was in the front office of the Tampa Bay Rays when they pulled him out. His name is Blake Butera. And this was admitted by Paul Taboni, an out-of-the-box hire. This is not something that you normally see. He's the youngest manager to be hired since 1972. Teams just don't do this. And we've had, Jack McKeon coming out of retirement. I think he was close to 80 when he took the Florida Marlins to the World Series 2003, something like that. So anyway, this was a conference call yesterday that Taboni had with reporters to make it official that Blake Butera is his guy.
What I'll say about Blake is that one thing I learned through just talking to so many people, either within the Rays organization or outside, is he's got an uncanny ability to gain the respect and trust of like the grizzled veteran baseball coach that, maybe has been in the league for 50 plus years, but then also the first year analyst that is new to the game, right? That is probably trying to figure out like what his or her path is. Like Blake also has an uncanny ability to relate with that person, right? So to me, it's one of Blake's greatest strengths. He's just able to really connect with people. And circling back to your question, I think the player group, especially like younger players, will find him extremely easy to connect with. But then also, like what you said at the start is true too. Like he's not afraid to hold folks accountable, which I think is a huge part of the job as well.
You notice something here about Taboni? He's got this tick. Like some people say, you know what I'm saying? He's got this tick where he says after every answer almost, right, no. Wrong! Right. Wrong! Right. I mean, lose that tick. You're a young man. You don't have to say right after every answer. You're going to hear more of this. This is new baseball. It's been, I guess, in effect for some years. This is the way things are done. The analytics department takes a look at the game, and they tell the manager how to manage the game. This is a guy who's never managed in the majors before, never managed above A-ball, 33 years old. Taboni, even younger, at 32, says, yes, we're going to use the analytics to kind of tell him what to do, but ultimately he's going to have to pull the trigger during the game.
Like so much of this work is done before the game starts, right? And I think our job as the front office is to provide Blake with all the information he needs to be successful, right? And then if we do a really good job, building this relationship that hopefully is built on a foundation of trust, right? It's like when the game starts, it's like, Blake, you go get him, right? And we fully entrust you and empower him to make the decisions that he needs to make to be a really good in-game decision maker. So, and Blake also has unique perspective in that respect too, right? Coming from a front office. So I think he's pretty well equipped to, be a really good in-game strategist right from the get-go.
Right, Paul?
Wrong!
Right, Paul?
Wrong!
Right?
Wrong!
Yeah, stop. Listen to the tapes of your answers, and please stop with the right. That's that. So, young guys, we'll see how it works out. What else we're going to do here. The rest of the staff, they're going to hire that. Also, according to Taboni, there is not going to be right now a general manager. He says assistant GM Devin Pearson will oversee the Nantz player development. Assistant GM Justin Horowitz will oversee acquisitions. And Mike DiBartolo is actually sticking around. He was the interim GM when Mike Rizzo was fired in July. He'll be the senior vice president and assistant general manager overseeing the baseball operations department. All these guys seem to have this baseball operations overseeing title in it. I don't know how it's all going to work, but the traditional general manager will not be here, and we will have Taboni as the president of baseball operations. As far as the staff, and I'd like to see this for no other reason that at least there'd be some familiarity there and at least some link to the World Series. Sean Doolittle, who was a pitching strategist with the team this past year, could stick around, according to the Washington Post. And assistant hitting coach Chris Johnson also under considerations for that. So young people running the team, a young person who needs to lose the tick right. and a manager who we have not met yet because, again, I don't understand why they did it this way, where you're telling the media who your manager is, and we've known this for over a week, maybe almost 2 weeks now, and you don't have them there for a news conference. That was odd. In Baltimore, they did it the traditional way, and they brought out their new manager who has been more experienced in baseball than Blake Butera, and his name is Albernaz. His name is Craig Albernaz, and he has been with the Cleveland Indians as like the associate manager for the last couple of years, and they've done very well. Kind of a traditional baseball guy, never made it to the major leagues, played in the minors for some time. 5'8", like Earl Weaver, if you want to make that connection. That's kind of a cool thing. And he's also from New England, and kind of sounds like the Gorton's fisherman when he was introduced yesterday, but he gave it the old, and this happens at every single news conference hiring. The new guy says that he's excited to be here.
I'm just excited. This is a dream come true for me. When you start coaching, you don't think about being a big league manager, at least I didn't, but as you navigate your relationships, navigate certain teams, and you can kind of see that's something that you want to do and a goal you want to obtain. And to do it in such a historic franchise as the Baltimore Orioles, it really is a dream come true. And I just can't wait for the fans to come out, to watch our boys compete, because we're going to play a very exciting brand of baseball. And as Mike alluded to, it's going to be a great bounce back year for this group. And I can't wait. I'm excited. Mike
being Mike Elias, the GM who did stick around through the upheaval in the organization. Have you ever heard a new manager say anything else other than I'm excited to be here? We're going to play an exciting brand of ball. Okay, fine. David Rubenstein, the owner of the team, he's kind of been invisible lately. When he first bought the team, you saw him everywhere. He was in that section where they soak the fans with water when there's a big hit and stuff like that. He was kind of invisible as the team went down the tubes in the second half of the season. He did show up for this and willingly gave his seal of approval to Craig Albernaz.
Mike interviewed a number of people, so did I. And from the beginning, when we were talking to people, people said, well, this person you're interviewing is good, but if you can get Craig, you really be fortunate. Everybody kept saying, he's the guy you should get. You may not be lucky enough to get him, but if you can get him, that's the guy you want. So when we talked to him, we realized why everybody said that. He's very impressive. Despite his accent, we think he can learn how to speak Baltimoreese. And we also thought he had, by far, the cutest 2-year-old daughter in Major League Baseball. And she's here, and the star of the show. So, and his great sons as well. So we're really excited to have him here. If you read about his background, he's been a leader everywhere he's ever been. People always say he's a take-charge person who has made every organization he's been at better because he was there. So we were thrilled when he agreed to accept the offer, and we're looking forward to many, many years with him and us. So, we are now going to spend a lot of time seeing what is out there and what other players we can bring to the team and strengthen the team. Last year we had a lot of injuries. I think in Major League Baseball history, virtually nobody had as many players on a roster as we did. I think we had 70 players at one point on that roster. I think the record was like 71 in the history of baseball. So 70 people played on our roster at one point, so that's a lot of injuries. It's not likely we're going to have that again. So if we get a healthy team, some of the players we're going to add, and the great manager we have, I think we're in pretty good shape. Remember, Toronto was in last place the year before they went to the World Series. They were in last place before they went to the World Series. So you can come back from the bottom, and we expect to do that.
Well, we'll see. That's the job that Craig Albernaz has. You heard some chatter in the background. That was the daughter. Look, I'm not an expert, but I learned a lot about this in the last few years now that I have a 3-year-old granddaughter. Rubenstein referred to her as 2. She looks and sounds closer to 3. And truth be told, I used to have a big problem with this. But now being a grandfather of 2 going on 3, I've softened on this. I've never been a fan of coaches, managers, players bringing their kids up during a news conference. I mean, it's a working situation for the reporters covering it. But I guess this is all part of the feel-good story of Craig Albernaz, who comes here with his beautiful young family. He's got 2 boys and a little girl. And, in fact, the little girl kind of upstaged things a bit during the news conference as Albernaz was talking about his family.
Yeah, when you have kids, it just changes the whole perspective of life and the game of baseball. Not in a like it wasn't in a negative way before, but you just hold.
Here we go. Here's the real star.
Hi, Gigi. You want to sit with Daddy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
You say hi?
Hi.
Okay. But yeah, it makes life so much more enjoyable and having them around the field. They'll be around a lot, so get used to it. Yeah, they like to be hitting the cage and stuff, so it's just great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then obviously my wife Genevieve, I don't know how she does it with 3 kids when I'm doing this, so she's a real rock star of the family.
Yeah, I could totally see my granddaughter Eliza doing just what Gigi did. The Orioles hat was sitting on the table, and she gave it to Daddy, and he said thank you, and she said you're welcome. So okay, I've softened. I understand that. It kind of comes with the territory. You reach this age in life, and your kids start having kids, and you look at them, and you just melt. So where I used to kind of rail against this, like, come on, you don't bring the kid up there. I brought the kid up there, and I actually felt, okay about that. I've softened. Coming up, what Mike Locksley says about the fans chanting, "Fire Locksley, fire Locksley." We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Well, here's the state of things when you have injuries in the NFL like the Commanders have had. They have just updated their roster moves, signing Treylon Burks and Sheldon Day from the practice squad. Burks, a wide receiver, once a first-round pick, but this kind of flamed out. Sheldon Day, also a defensive tackle. They signed cornerback Trey Hawkins and safety Darryl Worley to the practice squad. I mean, there's just not much out there with other teams suffering injuries as well. And it's a season that you have to kind of chalk up to, well, okay, you had the great year last year, raising expectations. But, I was saying this to John Matthews, who's the news director at WMAL this morning, that if last year had gone like most people expected, which would have been, 7 wins would have felt like a pretty big step for last year. And even if Jaden Daniels was proving to be the guy, and he is proving to be the guy. I mean, this year I don't think you can judge him really not just because of his injuries, but because of all the other injuries. He hasn't played with his weapons. He's played 2 games, I think, with Terry McLaurin. That's it. So, you got to chalk some of that up. But because everything got raised last year, that you look at this year as such a big letdown. They're probably still going to win 6 games, I would think, maybe 7. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but I think that there's a possibility with 8 games to go that they could win 3 or 4 more. I think that's possible. But, because of the feel from last year that this is such a crushing disappointment. There are 2 things that you can look to. One, Jaden Daniels. Even with the struggles this year, it looks like he's still going to be a great quarterback in this league. He's already proven to be a great quarterback. He was a Pro Bowler last year. And this is not RG3. Stop with that. It's not that. And number 2, and this is the most important thing, Dan Snyder doesn't own the team anymore. So as long as that's the case, you have hope. Because during the 24 years that Snyder owned the team, especially in the last 15, anytime you had a pretty good season, like you made the playoffs, it wasn't going to last because he would futz with it. And he didn't have the right people running the organization. Needed a good, strong general manager. Needed a good coach. He couldn't do either one. Nobody wanted to come here. They had the worst facilities in the league, not just the stadium, but the practice facilities. So things have changed. It's a bad year. It's very disappointing, all that thing. But it just shows you what you can do. You just don't have much of an option now when you have those kind of injuries. And as much as you say next man up, the next man up just isn't as good as the man he's replacing. It's a fact of life. That's why they pay these kind of salaries. That's why you pay Terry McLaurin what you pay him, because he's that guy if he's on the field. If he's not on the field, it's a double whammy. Not just the fact that he's not there, but the fact that his salary is eating up. Their cap situation is pretty good, so it's not quite like that. But if you didn't have him there, what would you have replaced him with? And would you have somebody who could have been more helpful at this point? All right, Maryland football. I got a lot of pushback on my defense of Mike Locksley, not just this year, but last year, including from my own son, who's a graduate of Indiana University, huge fan, loving what they're doing this year. He lives in Seattle, and he and a buddy went up and saw them play at Oregon, and their biggest win of the year, knocking off Oregon at Oregon. Both teams are going to be in the playoff, but that was an enormous win. They're undefeated. They came into Maryland, and they laid the lumber. 5 turnovers for the Terps. Indiana won 55-10, and having been there for the first half, probably wasn't even as close as that. And look, your record is what it is. And Mike Locksley has done this time and time again. This is now his 7th year with the team, and they get off to very good starts. Some of it has to do with scheduling. Some of it has to do with, false victory, I guess you'd call it. When they beat Wisconsin, I was among those who said, see. Well, beating Wisconsin this year on the road is not like beating Wisconsin like 10 years ago on the road. Luke Fickell's got a disaster on his hand. They're a terrible team. He's going to get fired. And they didn't even have Billy Edwards, who was Maryland's quarterback last year and was not going to be playing this year with Malik Washington, transferred to Wisconsin, and he wasn't even healthy, and their backup was terrible, a shrimp who can't play. So, okay, you got to take that with a grain of salt. They were, though, competitive in the 2 games that they played against Washington and the game against Nebraska. Those were competitive games. This last game, not competitive at all. And this is the pattern with Mike Locksley. They started 4-0 for the 3rd time in the last 5 years. They're calling it now September Maryland. They had the same start in 2021. They lost 3 straight and 6 of 7. Then in 2023, they lost 4 straight and 5 of their last 6. Now it's 2025, and they are riding a 4-game losing streak, starting out 4-0, now 4-4, facing a must-win, an absolute must-win at Rutgers on Saturday to get to 5, and they need 6 to make it to a bowl game. This was Locksley yesterday. I don't know what you'd call this, false hope, low bar, whatever. This is Locksley as they head into the game on Saturday at Rutgers.
A win this weekend against Rutgers will give us 5 wins. 5 wins is 1 more than we had a year ago. That's called progress, a little slow progress. A win this week against Rutgers gives us a 2nd conference win. That would be progress because we won 1 a year ago. It's easy to say that, same old Maryland. I'll sit here and tell you, because what I see every day, it's not the deep. We have a deep-rooted foundation to this team that I'm just going to tell y'all. You can write what you want, but the team is writing its story as we go.
Well, the story isn't heading in the right direction now, Mike, and it's leading to questions at his weekly news conference, which is usually pretty tame. I mean, the fangs are not out in most cases, even after ugly losses, even after they've blown leads as they did against Washington and Nebraska. But now the questions are starting to get tougher for Locksley.
Just what is your message to the fans who packed the shell Saturday, leaving early because they're not just frustrated by the result of that game against Indiana, but now the past 4 games? What is your message to them, that frustration?
My message is thank you. Man, how great an opportunity, and they created an environment that this team created the expectation. So we created the expectation, they created the environment. You know what? We're going to keep showing up, so we're going to ask them to do the same. We're going to have relentless faith. We're going to ask our supporters to have the same. The real ones that show up each week and see it weren't happy yet last week because none of us were, but I can tell you that it's still not your same old Maryland. And I'll continue to shout that because I know what's going on inside the building, and the supporters and people that really know us get a pretty good understanding that we got a pretty solid foundation to build on.
And I know you said a win against Rutgers gives you 2 conference wins that season. You would call that progress. Yeah. Wouldn't you consider that a little bit of a low bar to get 2 conference wins and consider that progress and hope it'd be a little bit more?
That's called slow progress, and progress is moving forward. If a year ago, and we can't compare it to 7 years ago because this landscape reset college football. So in this landscape, if you reset it, when you have 64 new players and you see the amount of freshmen and sophomores involved with it, I think if you understand football and maybe get out the police report and look at the wisdom of what's happened when you play really talented young players around here the last few years, they end up going to 3 straight bowls, winning all 3. They end up winning a bunch of ball games for you and being really successful.
Well, okay, and I understand where he's coming from there. No question the game has changed, but as they say, only the strong survive. And all he had to do was look across the field on Saturday and see what could be possible. Now, I don't know the booster situation at Indiana. I don't know what happened there in terms of how much money was available. But if you look at the talent on that roster, it's not really high recruits. It's not big-time transfer portal guys. These are guys who were identified by Curt Cignetti as being able to help them. Yes, he took a lot of his guys with him that had success at James Madison, but, I mean, James Madison, it's not like he came from Ohio State where he took half his team with him. And so this is where it's going to get really interesting for Mike Locksley with the new athletic director, Jim Smith. I think that may buy him a year. I think the pressure would be ratcheting up at this point with the way that things have unfolded. I still think Mike Locksley is a good coach, and I think he's a good answer for Maryland because I think you have to be realistic with them. Can you be Indiana football? I don't know. Is that lightning in a bottle? Will that sustain? They're paying Cignetti like they think it will. They gave him a 10-year contract, and he's 63 years old. So I don't know. But that they think it's going to last. But at Maryland, this is not what you want. Obviously, you don't want to have great Septembers and then have everything collapse in October as it has in recent years. But in that 2023 season, when Maryland lost 4 straight and 5 of 6, I think they beat Indiana that year. I'm pretty sure they did. And now 2 years later, you saw what they did at College Park, winning 55-10. So Locksley having to answer that question about the fans leaving, and now the really tough question, which some coaches might explode at. His answer was, to me, fascinating.
Did you hear the chants of Fire Locksley on Saturday, and how did that sit with you?
Of course I did.
How did that sit with you?
I don't know if you remember me telling you about that give a crap gauge. We're in entertainment, man. We sucked last Saturday. I would have chanted it. I would have probably chanted it too if I had a few beers and we played the way we played. But that's not going to move me, man. I've done harder. I've been through worse. As I've said, I didn't hope my way to be the head coach here at Maryland. All right, and so we're in the entertainment business. I get judged to win games. I like to follow those guys to their jobs that scream Fire Locksley, put a camera on them, and watch them do their work and see how motivated they are to do theirs. I know I'm motivated, but not because of them, but because of the kids in that locker room, the staff I put together. That's what motivates me.
Does it frustrate you when you hear that?
No, not at all. I actually smiled. I was like, I thought to myself, yeah, I'd probably be chanting that crap too.
Well, it's a little easier to smile when you're making $5 or $6 million a year, whatever he makes, and the buyout is over $13 million. So I don't know about this analogy of putting a camera on the people who are booing at their jobs, because if they lose their jobs, there's no $13 million parachute on their way out the door. I understand his chipping back at the question. That's understandable, but it's not the same thing. And I guess you could say, hey, people showed up to boo us. That's okay. That's better than nothing. The famous Jim Elia rant. 15,000 people come out here to boo us, and the other, or 15% of the world, 85% of the world is working. The other 15% come out here to boo us. In this case, Maryland, which hadn't been drawing well. A couple things. One, they did get off to that 4-0 start, including the win over Wisconsin on the road. The fact that they were at least competitive with Washington and Nebraska, and then bringing in the number 2 team in the country. There were. I'll tell you this. I was there because I'm a season ticket holder. There were a number of Indiana fans there, but it wasn't really the reason that game was a sellout. There were a lot of Maryland fans there, and then they're starting to get a little fed up, which is understandable. But, again, if you have the right guy to come in, if you're sure you got the next Cignetti, bring him in. But I don't know where you're going to find them. And the same cycle of coaches, the same people who've gotten fired are being mentioned for the openings across the country. It's like musical chairs. They're just going to go to other places. Brian Kelly is probably going to wind up someplace. James Franklin is probably going to wind up someplace. It's just the way the athletic directors think, the way the alumni think. Got to get a big name in here. Got to get a proven guy in here. And if they fall on their face, well, okay, there's a big money thing for them that we'll raise, and we'll give it to them out the door. And so, Maryland is in this odd spot. And as far as the basketball goes, I said this yesterday. I hope they have a good team. I don't know anybody on this team, and I don't really know anybody on Georgetown either. So I'm going to watch this game on Friday between Maryland and Georgetown, but it's really just for the uniforms, because this is not like the old days where you saw Patrick Ewing for 4 years, where you saw Len Bias for 4 years. So those days are over. Maybe the last dinosaur for this was Julian Reese. Julian Reese, I guess someday they'll put a statue of him somewhere inside the Xfinity Center and say, this is the last one. This is the last 4-year player who we ever had and probably will ever have again. Because with the ability to go to the NBA, if you're really good, most guys go after 1 year, sometimes after 2. And if you're really good at Maryland, would you go someplace else to get more money? Yeah, some of them do. But they managed to raise enough money to keep him around for 4 years. And he was part of a Sweet 16 team on his way out the door. But that doesn't happen anymore. Those days are long gone in college sports. Speaking of college sports, I found this to be somewhat interesting. It's not a huge deal. But, at the end of the season in the NFL, they start to play Saturday games. And this started when the college football regular season would end in, like, mid-November. Like, you'd play the Army-Navy game, and you'd have 2 weeks before the bowl games would start, at least the big bowl games. So they would play Saturday games. Well, now the playoffs take up December. So the NFL, and I'm kind of surprised about this because this is Goliath, but they're going to move over to help out college football. And the Commanders have a game against the Eagles. This will be a Saturday, December 20th. We don't know the time yet, but the times for the games on Saturday will be 5 o'clock and 8:20. So it will not be the usual 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock starts, which would go head-to-head with the college football playoff games. So the games will start at 5 and 8, and then the Week 16 Saturday last year, last year, Week 16 is 1 and 4:30. This year, 5 and 8:20, and the College Football Selection Committee has a triple header all set for December 20th. First game will kick off at noon, followed by matchups on TNT at 3:30 and 7:30, and those will be announced on December 7th. They had the first college football poll out last night. No surprise, nothing really earth-shattering in any of that, and it doesn't mean anything now because things are going to change in these most teams have at least 3 games to go, some 4. And, to see Ohio State 1 and Indiana 2, yeah, okay, fine. I think it gets more interesting as we go along, and these last few weeks of the season are going to be fun to watch, but I didn't really get too worked up about anything we saw last night. All right, coming up, the YouTube dispute. Andrew Marchand of The Athletic explains it to Dan Patrick. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. There was a time when you had a television. You only paid to buy the television. It sat wherever it sat, your living room, your bedroom, and it had 4, maybe 5 channels. If you had UHF, you had to have a special antenna, a loop antenna, and it was pretty simple to watch TV. Watching TV now, you got to have a PhD to do it. And with all the streaming services and the existence of cable such as it is, how do you figure out what's the best price? And once you do, you think you have a great price. Well, there's a dispute, and they take it away. Hey, wait a minute. What happened to my ESPN? I wanted to watch the Monday night game. Oh, sorry, there's this dispute. and you've got stars from ESPN pitching. Hey, let's get this done. Let's. Well, I mean, it's crazy what's happening right now in all that. So Andrew Marchand, who covers sports media for The Athletic, was on with Dan Patrick yesterday trying to make sense of this YouTube dispute, which, if it spills into next weekend, is going to be really ugly. It's been ugly so far for people who have it, but another weekend without sports, not good, but he lays it all out, and I'll get to that. I did want to get to the Candace Buckner column in the Washington Post about the Commanders, if you haven't read it. And she makes some interesting points, some of which I agree with completely. But have we drifted back in the early part of November to the malaise that was the end of the Dan Snyder era, really the last half of it? He was the owner for 24 years. There were a few playoff appearances sprinkled in there, but by and large, it drifted from anger to apathy, and the apathy lasted quite a long time. And have we gone back there with half a season of disappointment, mainly due to injury, I think, more than anything else, age, certainly. But the way I felt about it was that they caught lightning in a bottle last year. Adam Peters spackled over a terrible roster with veteran players who didn't have much left. And they got through it. They got to the point where, okay, they went up against the eventual Super Bowl champions. They weren't a great match for them, though they did beat them during the regular season and beat them turning the ball over a lot, too, which was bizarre. But, okay, they had their comeuppance when they went to Philadelphia. I felt for a while like there's something magic here. They're going to win the damn Super Bowl. But obviously that didn't happen with what occurred in Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game. But to think that they got there was crazy. So I look at this season like this. Yeah, it's disappointing. But if they had the season last year that most expected, like, hey, it'd be great if they won 6 or 7 games. That would be a 2 or 3 game improvement. And you got a rookie quarterback who you hope, by the end of the season, you got something there. Well, he proved to be great, and the roster proved to be a lot better than most people thought. Dan Quinn, very good coach, preached the brotherhood, the whole thing, and it all worked out. And so that's what makes this year so much more disappointing. If last year had been more like this year, like through, 9 games, they had 3 wins, which wouldn't have been unexpected, would you be looking at this year the same way? I don't think so. So I thought Candace captured this pretty well in the Post today. She writes, apathy used to live there, meaning Landover, and Sundays in Landover felt like the appropriate time and place for long-suffering fans to host communal therapy sessions, where those sell-the-team T-shirts were in vogue and only happy roars from the sea of visiting fans could shush the boos being directed towards the owner's suite. For years, the football team and the people who owned it outright angered the locals, or worse, didn't even register an emotional response from a fan base that had moved on. Indifference used to live there, and the carousel of mediocre quarterbacks made it easy to believe that Washington's playoff victory drought would last well into 2 decades. Why expect anything less than dysfunction from a franchise whose most recent first-round picks were destined to be NFL journeymen? And, yeah, the 4 first-rounders under Ron Rivera all gone for the team, 2 of them outright released. So, yeah, why would you believe any of that last year? Then, as she points out, here comes Jayden Daniels, the dude. And with Daniels, the greatest thing began to happen. People started to care. And the sellouts, although there were sellouts with a large percentage of the crowd for the visiting team, that began to change. I was at the Chicago game where they had the Hail Mary, and it looked like there was an awful lot of burgundy in the crowd, which was unusual if you'd been to a Commanders game in the previous few years. Then she talks about what happened on Monday night or Sunday night, and the various stages of rage. Because why was he even in the game, Quinn? Eventually, they might have landed on something like acceptance, realizing that the final 2 months of this season no longer matter. And I guess we'll find out more about Jayden today, but it's possible his season is over. And if his season is over, this season is over for sure for the team. She writes, here come the yawns, the shrugs, and the sighs, the vacant stares while looking ahead to 8 more games of meaningless football, because if Daniels doesn't play another snap this season, and she puts in parentheses, he shouldn't, then it will be easy to imagine the numbness felt over the next 9 weeks. We've become sort of veterans of that over the years, haven't we? We didn't think we'd have to go back to that, but maybe we do. She says, the good news is the state of indifference shouldn't last long. It's temporary, because if Daniels can return next season fully healthy, and if general manager Adam Peters can reconstruct a roster that has the appearance of depth, then the Commanders' training staff won't have to earn time and a half while dealing with one gut punch injury after another, then the passion should return. She says, it looks like an army of rival fans flooding the stadium and an aimless wander through the winter straight to a top 5 pick in next year's draft. Overall, it feels like home. Yeah, we sort of become used to this, and last year was an aberration. But I think the two big things. One, Jaden is not going to be RG3. It's not going to be a one-year wonder and a career flameout like that. That's not the same. He's not the same guy. He's not wired the same way. It's different. And most importantly, Dan Snyder doesn't own the team. And as long as that's the case, there is hope that this can become a real football team. What we had last year was a magic carpet ride. And maybe they get back there in a year or two, but this roster has to be rebuilt. And what most people said going into the 2024 season is, okay, if Daniels works out, great. Terry McLaurin is a really good wide receiver. They picked up some complementary parts. If Zach Ertz has something left, the offensive line could be okay. You got Brian Robinson at running back. There are some things there that are pretty decent about the offense. The defense we thought was a mess, and it was going to take years to rebuild it. And while the defense hasn't been spectacular, it was good enough last year. It's not good enough this year. And, God bless Bobby Wagner. Thank you for playing. The Marshawn Lattimore deal was a disaster. He's hurt, out for the year. You move on, and you try and rebuild. And the defense, we knew, was going to take some time to do it. It just happened last year that because the offense was so good, because all the things fell in place, including 5 games where they won on the final drive, that we thought, they're close. And we've made this mistake before as fans. And I say we, not we as a member of the team, but we as fans of the team, such as, and Dan Snyder was the most believer in this, foolishly, that when they won the division in 1999, they were that close, and all you had to do was add a couple of big-name free agents like Dion and Bruce Smith, and boom, you're going to win the Super Bowl. Doesn't work that way. What's happening with this dispute between YouTube and Disney, and how come I can't watch Monday Night Football if I have YouTube TV? Andrew Marchand covers sports media for The Athletic, talking to Dan Patrick about how we got to this point.
Well, how we got here is these disputes have been going on forever. YouTube started YouTube TV in 2017, $35 per month. The idea being cable's too expensive, so they put this together. It's become pretty popular. 10 million people have it. And now as they grow, where they're in competition with Comcast and Spectrum, who have around 12 million as the biggest places where people get their networks like ESPN, Fox, NBC, etc. They're now $82, $83 a month. So what happens is there's fights all the time between over the years between providers like ESPN. ESPN charges around $15 per month to these entities, and then they pass it on to consumers. And so they are arguing about the price. When you look at Alphabet, which owns Google and YouTube, they are a $3 trillion company. Disney's a $200 billion company. And so I wrote in my column yesterday, it's like rooting for the Dodgers or the Yankees. Nobody wins. The losers are people like you who have YouTube TV, unfortunately, Dan.
How do we make our voices heard? Because ESPN's had their big name talent come out and, I guess, campaign that ESPN's not the bad guy in this.
Yeah, I think the point that I would make is the amount of money these companies make, $3 trillion. That's the market cap around for Alphabet. For Disney, it's $200 billion. So your $80 is not that important to them. So I'm not saying they don't care. I'm not saying they don't care. They do care. I don't think they're insincere and caring at some level. But in terms of this is just pure business. YouTube wants to be treated like the big boys. with I could bore people with the actualities of it all, but they want to be treated like the other big entities. ESPN is pointing to the fact that they just easily did deals with Spectrum and others at the same price point or similar price points. And so that's where the divide is. And so there's no picking who's right. I wrote yesterday, Google's mantra or motto has been, a couple of things, but one is, do no evil. It feels pretty evil that you're paying $80 a month. You did your end. You didn't get your games this weekend or Monday. And then Mickey Mouse, I've said before, he's a passive aggressive little rodent. Now they do a lot of great things at Disney, but they also are business people. So not always the happiest place on earth. And so there's nobody to root for here. And we went through though where it's going to take a little longer now because you had college football on Saturday, you had Monday Night Football, no deal. So now I don't really expect anything to happen until this weekend or maybe Monday Night Football next week.
What's the future of streaming? Like, can you get to a point where ABC, CBS, NBC aren't carrying the marquee events? Is that in the linear TV in the not too distant future?
Yeah, I don't think that. I think if you look at all time, maybe, but in terms of in the short term, next decade or so, we're going to have this. I mean, I think a perfect example would be the NBA just did incredible deals for them for $76 billion, and they're going to be on NBC, your Peacock as well. They're on Amazon Prime, and then they remained on ABC and ESPN. So the idea that Netflix or YouTube TV or Apple or Amazon Prime Video is about to take over everything is a misnomer, at least in the near term. Even when the NFL, which is surely going to opt out when they can at the end of this decade, or at least threaten to opt out, I don't think it will change. I do think you could see a Netflix getting bigger or YouTube TV getting bigger, Amazon Prime Video getting more. I think those are all possibilities, but I don't think, and I think it'd be stupid if the NFL were to get rid of the model they have with ABC and ESPN and the networks. And so, yes, those guys are coming, but they're not fully there yet.
Well, and part of the reason is that the networks will pay whatever it takes to keep the NFL because, I don't know if it was this past year, but 2 years ago, 93 of the top 100 network TV shows were NFL. And the number one network TV show overall is Sunday Night Football. So I don't think that's going to change in the near future, but maybe there is a price point. But these disputes, they used to be settled seemingly, right up to the deadline. Like, okay, no Monday Night Football. Okay, we got a deal. But now we've already knocked one out, and today is Wednesday. We got another weekend of sports coming up with college football and pro football. Is it possible this will stretch longer? It doesn't affect me mainly because I'm too old to have figured out how to do this with streaming. Maybe I'll eventually have to do it. I still have cable. Maybe I'm overpaying. I'm sure I am, but I don't have to worry about this. They don't. Although there have been some of these with cable channels too that they'll say, well, we can't carry this because they're charging that, and they eventually reach a settlement, but hasn't happened here. Let's segue to the Baltimore Ravens, who were left for dead on the side of the road. They were 1-5. They had lost 4 straight games, and now they have righted the ship a little bit. I do this with a grain of salt because of the teams they beat. They beat Chicago at home. That was sort of a nice win. They beat Miami on the road, so now they're 3-5, and people are looking at them as possibly winning the division in what is a bad division. Now, I looked at the rest of the schedule. They're at Minnesota this week. That's going to be a tough game. But then they have 3 in a row that they should blitz through. They're at Cleveland, they're home against the Jets, and they're home against Cincinnati. So those 3 should make them, and if they win this week, they'd be, 4-5? So they'd be 7-5 and poised over the last games of the season to make their run. They've got 2 with Pittsburgh in the last part. After they finish that Cleveland, Jets, Cincinnati cakewalk, it would seem. They've got Pittsburgh at home, then they're at Cincinnati again, and then the last three are going to determine whether they win the division or even get into the playoffs. New England looks good. They will come to Baltimore. Then they're at Green Bay and at Pittsburgh, and that last game of the year is, I'm sure, going to be flex. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty certain with the way things are lining up. Baltimore and Pittsburgh, probably the Sunday night game at the end of the year to determine the division. But we'll see. This is going to be a one to watch. Now, as far as where they started and where they are now, Derrick Henry, 10-year veteran, says to Rich Eisen yesterday, all good.
We hungry, focused, determined, resilient in our approach. Had some adversity early, and that comes with every season. But now we're ready to get things back on track, take it week by week, get better throughout the week through our preparation, and want to be 1-0 each and every Sunday.
Well, and in terms of that adversity that you're referring to, how has that sharpened the iron, do you think, for the 2025 Ravens, Derrick?
I think that it's prepared us for for the rest of the season. We got some of the kinks out early. Some guys went through some injuries, and I think the bye week and us having another little mini bye week has helped guys get rested, everybody refocus, refresh, and ready to take it week by week. Just being 1-0 every week, that's the focus.
Okay, and what's been John Harbaugh's message throughout this entire process that you're willing to share?
I think it's the same thing. The preparation, be focused, get better every day, accountability, and week by week. We got a long road ahead of us, which we know, and not dig too far ahead of ourselves. Focus on the task at hand, put the work in, play our solid football, and focus on being 1-0. I think that's all you can do.
Well, that's why they say they play them one at a time. And the next one is at Minnesota this week after being well rested. They won at Miami last Thursday night, and here they are for the stretch run after a terrible start. In the NFL, it's a week-to-week league. Things change, a couple of victories, and the outlook is totally different for Derrick Henry and the Ravens. Coming up, Jim Nantz has a story about Mike Ditka that you are 100% going to want to hear. We'll get to that next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
There are so many people now who do podcasts. It's hard to keep up, but there is one called This Is Football. I think his name is Brian Clark. I used to see him on Around the Horn. He's got a role with ESPN. He's part of the new guard. Guy, I guess he's in his 30s or so. He's pretty good, pretty glib on the air, and his writing is good. And he had Jim Nantz on his podcast. And they swerved into this, and it's such a good story that I wanted to replay it for you. It's about Mike Ditka. Now, we haven't seen Ditka in a while. My cousin from Chicago has been a Bears season ticket holder for over 40 years and really keeps up with this stuff, and he says the word is Ditka is not doing well. I guess he must be in his 80s by now. But in his day, he represented what Chicago Bears football was. He spent his whole career with the Bears. He played for the Bears. They traded him to the Eagles. He finished his career in Dallas. He was an assistant to Tom Landry, and then he became the head coach of the Bears and personified the Bears. I mean, he was the tough guy, and he wasn't a Chicago guy. He's a Pennsylvania guy. He grew up in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, which is where Tony Dorsett is from. And as a matter of fact, his high school basketball coach was Press Maravich. Press Maravich is Pete Maravich's father. Pete Maravich, tragically died of a heart issue when he was 40 years old, but in his day was one of the most exciting basketball players ever, both at LSU and his time in the NBA. But, Ditka had interesting intersections. And as the story goes, that Presmarovich used to have to throw him out of practice all the time because he was fighting. He was an angry guy. And he wound up playing at Pitt, great player at Pitt, drafted by the Bears, got angry about his salary. They traded him to the Eagles, and he finished with the Cowboys. And then returning to Chicago, it just fit. The super fans, when they used to do their thing on Saturday Night Live, Ditka. Who's the toughest guy in the world? Ditka. He was that guy. And then he parlayed that into a really good broadcasting career. And I'll say this. I don't know what he made as a coach. I'm sure he did well. But it seemed like nobody chased the buck more than Mike Ditka. And I thought at the time, well, I understand because he grew up in a tough, situation, a lower middle class upbringing in Western Pennsylvania made you tough, and he had to work for everything he got. And money is something that he didn't have his whole life, and he went after it hard. And there's a story about. It's told, I think, in the documentary on the 1985 Bears, who, in my mind, are still the best team that ever played. Certainly the defense was the best. And they came within a close Monday night loss at Miami of going undefeated. That team had a shot to go all the way, and they just obliterated two teams in the playoffs. One of them was the Rams. The other one was the Giants. And then the New England was no contest in the Super Bowl. And Ditka told his team during that 85 season, look, we got something special here. Let's not chase endorsements. And they're getting ready to play in the NFC Championship game against the Giants, and they turn on the TV, and there's Ditka doing like 3 commercials. And he did all kinds of commercials, trading off his image as the tough guy, but sort of the tough guy with the soft underbelly. I don't know how he was able to pull that off, but it just kind of felt that way. And so he after he lost his job with the Saints, and he was a showman too with the Saints, and he admitted it later that when he traded his entire draft to the Redskins for Ricky Williams, it was part of the show. I mean, who now would ever do that for a running back, as good as that running back may be? But when they made that move, let's see, that would have been 1999. That was the last draft that Charlie Casserly did, and Casserly made it work. I mean, he from that, he traded some of the picks to get Brad Johnson. He got Champ Bailey, who was a Hall of Fame corner. Unfortunately, that didn't work out in the long term here. Worked out for Denver. But a lot of the things that helped to build that team that won the division in 1999 and probably could have done it again in 2000 without Dan Snyder going for it with Bruce Smith and Dion and stuff like that was from that trade. And ultimately, that was the end of the line for Ditka in New Orleans as a coach. And then he transitioned to doing a lot of television, some of it with NBC and some of it with ESPN. And I guess he was still doing this until just a few years ago. And I'll tell you something else about his chasing of the buck. When Zabe and I were doing the afternoon show, a guy named Jimmy Shapiro, who does a lot of this kind of stuff, he was working, I forget which gambling site it was, but he offered us Mike Ditka once a week to come on the show for free. All we had to do was plug the gambling site, which was easy to do, and it was kind of cool to talk to Ditka. It was fun, and I'm thinking, this is Mike Ditka. He's chasing whatever they're paying him, doing a local radio show in D.C. I'm sure they had 4 or 5 other markets lined up, and maybe he made for an afternoon's worth of work, $15,000, $20,000, whatever they paid him for the year. But I just thought, a guy like that chasing dollars there was maybe related to the fact that he didn't have any money growing up, and he understood that he needed to have money. Well, here's a story of his generosity, which is really a cool story, and it's one of those stories that I would say about myself, I want to be like Mike. Jim Nantz talking on I think it's Brian Curtis is his name, the podcast about his experience with Mike Ditka.
The coach, 3 years. He sat right off my left shoulder on the NFL Today set. And, Mike, he just has that look that he's a tough guy. And I love Mike Ditka. And those were cherished times. But people would approach him You know, it wasn't like he was smiling and warm and engaging and out hugging and high-fiving everyone. But people come up and say hello to Mike. He was kind to everyone.
Yeah.
But he had a toughness about him that you saw it as a player, and then you're too young to remember, but when he was a coach and as a broadcaster. But I'll tell you how badass he was. We did 20 weeks a year of the NFL Today, 17 weeks of the regular season, wild card, divisional, AFC championship. And then, of course, if we had the Super Bowl, it'd be 21 weeks. I noticed when Mike would come to New York, sometimes I'd go and pick him up, and we go play golf on a Friday. And we go out to dinner Friday night. Saturday, we had meetings with our team. And Sunday, we do the show. Spent a lot of time with Mike. I noticed early on that all he carried were $100 bills. All he did was peel off C notes all the time.
Oh my gosh.
Buy a beer at the bar on the way out to dinner. Yeah, can I just, give me a Budweiser. $100, keep the change. Coat check. Comes into a restaurant, comes out, $100. Man on the street, homeless. There was one guy that kind of understood the routine, and he was there every week. Mike paid every time. $100 bill.
Oh my
I finally got up the nerve to say, hey, Coach, why don't you ever get change? why just the hondos? He says, hey, what's the difference anyway? He said, the way I look at it, when I die and they drop me down into the ground, I hope there's a little opening in that coffin. And my last $100 bill comes flying out and goes up into the sky and drifts away. That would make me happy. So I said, this gets a little pricey, doesn't it? It's not that bad, Jim. He said, here's the way I rationalize it in my head. We got 20 weeks. I come every single Friday to New York. I come in with 50 $100 bills, $5,000. And at the end of the season, I'm spending $100,000. I've allocated $100,000 to the football season to go enjoy myself in New York. And that's the way it is. I take $5,000 in cash in hundreds every single week. And that's what he did.
Isn't that cool? Isn't that amazing? No matter how much money I had, I don't know if I could do that. Maybe I could. I don't know. And I guess $100,000 in a football season. They were making the salaries that they make now in broadcasting, but okay, maybe he was making $1 million for those 20 weeks. Seems like a lot, but maybe he was even in those days. So you take a tenth of that and you spread it around to the people, make them feel good, make yourself feel good. Maybe it's worth it. But I like that. I think that would be a cool thing to be able to peel off $100 bills. Now, there's some stories like this. You may have heard the story of Leonard Toews. Leonard Toews was the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles, and he had a bad gambling problem, really bad gambling problem. And he used to go to Atlantic City on a regular basis and get cleaned out, drink. And the drunker he got, the more he gambled. The lines of credit that they gave him eventually had to be paid off. It was so bad. He was so bankrupt at the end. Well, I don't know if it's so bankrupt, however it was. He lost everything that in the last years of his life, he lived in an apartment that was paid for by Dick Vermeil, a man he once employed. Bram is coming up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.